Hi, Alessandra.
Hi, how are
Th
you?
Thank you for taking time out of your very busy day to have a little conversation with me.
No
Um,
problem.
so just to kick off, can you tell us a little bit about your role in the company?
So I'm the founder and director of We Are CoCo. We're a global network of people really within the fashion industry who have come together to offer their services and insights to brands and to companies that are looking to scale globally. So my job really is to spearhead the vision for the company, to continue to grow our network, to train our team internationally, and to set kind of goals and targets for every project that we're managing.
Brilliant, excellent. And where did this, or how did this journey start?
Mm, my background is in communications. So I started off in communications, but I've always had an absolute love for fashion. I remember when I became a Christian, I was like, dear God, I love you, but I don't want to become a nun. So I was kind of wondering, like, how am I going to marry the kind of two sides of things that I love and that I'm passionate about? But coming from quite a traditional background, I think it was very difficult and still probably is difficult for most parents to think about, like, well, how do you kind of do have a career in fashion. So my first job was with Agent Provocateur, and then my next job was right in the middle of COVID, but it was with the British Fashion Council, where I worked with some of the big British iconic brands today, so Christopher Kane, Erdem, Peter Pilotto, America Transu, and I worked under the New Generations or the New Gen program, which is a government initiative that basically supports brands with like general structural advice on how to scale. And then my role within the BFC was international head of press relations. So it was really every London Fashion Week, which is put on by British Fashion Council, to introduce those brands to the right retailers and the right, right media and right press at the time. Um, and then from there, I went to the Middle East for a season where I worked within hospitality and energy. So it's a completely different area of communications, but I pretty much learned, especially within hospitality, when you're working in hotels. So this is large hotel groups like a core, but as the only woman in the room, I was sitting down at a board of like 12 men, and each one of them had their department of finance and front desk or food and beverage or marketing. Um, and it was really my opportunity to see like how to build a business and how to build a business in action. So at a later stage now, when I decided to launch We Are CoCo as an agency, which we started off really kind of selling in brands to retailers, it was really me recognizing the need for a lot of these businesses to uh, like their businesses needed a lot of work in terms of like how do those businesses scale, how do they understand all the different areas of their business operationally, the finance part, the pricing part, etc. So we then formed a network of people who had very seasoned, years in fashion, who were going to come in and consult with those brands, and we've grown since then. So yeah, I can only thank God for that journey so far.
No, fantastic. And would you say how do you differ from your competition, or is there any competition? Does anybody do what you do?
There are, so you have the big consultancy players like PwC and Bain, who are in the market, and they do a lot of strategic work behind, Neiman Marcus and the acquisition, for example, with Saks or Farfetch. There's loads of consultancies out there, but none like We Are CoCo, in that, we genuinely have seasoned players in the market from all walks of fashion, from buying to distribution, who are actually within the business. The difference between us and our competitors is a lot of our competitors just work purely on numbers. We work based on numbers and experience. And because you have fashion, which is a very nuanced market that is driven by emotion and trends, numbers don't necessarily point to the correct strategy for every company. So we work with both retailers and we work with brands. So in a market like this where retailers are struggling to retain the attention and attract customers, it really has to be about developing the right product offering, the right cultural application to that consumer demographic, and also just looking at the data around what brands are performing and what is working and what isn't. And I think what we come in and do is that we take a lot of local insight and a lot of global experience, and we combine both to be able to really drive sales for our retailers and our brands. I'm really proud of what we do here. And I think also the difference between us is that and others is that we don't take ourselves so seriously. We know that we're in fashion. We're not curing cancer. We're here to essentially deal with clothing. So we approach everything with a service-based mentality that we're here to serve ultimately and find out what people need and then connect the right people to those projects.
Right. But I also know that there's this network. It's really interesting because recently I was in Rwanda where I went to a farm, a coffee farm. 70% of the farmers female. So, when you think of farming, a lot of people, especially in the West, you tend to think of men. But in other parts of the world, it's predominantly women. Now, I know in your industry, predominantly the people you're working with are women. Could you say a little bit about why you're proud of this network of women and what this means to them?
Absolutely. I'm a mother of two children, and I'm a mother first, and I believe other women should give themselves the opportunity as well to prioritize what's important to them, because I think generally speaking, I mean, I heard a quote the other day, I can't remember who it was by, but he said it very well, is that like CEOs who are women naturally understand that when you nurture the people within your business, they perform better. Whereas CEOs who are men look at numbers first and they think about the nurturing side of it a lot later. And you can see the difference in those companies' performance. What I love about working with women is that, like, we've created a real environment here where we allow women to be themselves, to come with their voices and with their ideas. And like the top table of all the retailers are still men. Most of the CEOs and VPs of some of the biggest retailers in the world are men. And I do genuinely think that the reason that the retail industry is underperforming is because of that. I think it's because it is a very, it is a very emotional, as I said before, industry that is driven by, customers buy out of anger or out of, because they love something or because they're going out on a date or because they're in a new season of their life. So it's a very emotional industry. So I think by having us as women in that forefront, as you can see from most of the buying teams tend to be women, that's why we connect with products. That's why we know what will move and what doesn't. However, I think the disconnect is that, like, a lot of men need to empower their buyers a lot more to be able to work by both sides of the fence. In order to be truly sustainable as a business, I think we need to be able to get to the product first. We need to be able to work with designers and work collaboratively so that we're selling things that we know is going to work, rather than just stocking things on shelves that we're hoping is going to work. And I think we've reached that point in data now where we can all filter in our ideas. But it takes creating platforms like We Are CoCo to give those women voices. And I'm really proud of the fact that we've done that.
What would you say to maybe a woman watching this, or it could be a man as well, but a woman watching this now who's got fashion ideas, they've got some products or they've made some clothes, but they're not really making much, or they don't really know what to do next. What would you say they should do?
I think at the moment, with the way that the market is going, everybody wants to look at wholesale as an option, which is, so wholesale prospectively is selling your product at like 2.5 to 2.7 of your retail price to a platform like a Harrods or Harvey Nichols or one of these like multi-brand department stores, or even the onlines. But what I would say is that most brands need to focus primarily and firstly on their customer, knowing their market, and focusing on driving your direct to consumer. Like at the end of the day, when you have a solid market of customers who are going to buy your product, anywhere in the world, you then command the market and you don't have to be begging at somebody else's table, essentially. So I would say really do your research on the customer you're trying to target, really understand their lifestyle, and really build a message that's going to lock into that customer and lock them into your product as to why your product is going to serve a need in their life. And then the next thing I'd probably tell them is to think about pricing. I think the difficulty with a lot of brands who want to work wholesale into these retailers is that the minute that you're trying to capture a wholesale market, your prices have to go up because you have to accommodate your manufacturing, your shipping, etc. All of those margins need to be qualified within that pricing before you even get to the customer. And then you're adding in the percentage that you're taking off of your revenue from the buyer. So everybody's got to get a piece, which is why customers are seeing prices that start at around 200 or 300 for the simplest of products. It's really because we're having to accommodate all these other aspects and pay off those debts essentially within that price margin. So I would say if you focus on a direct-to-consumer market and you maintain a reasonable price point, you'll drive more volume initially, and then eventually building in layers that you can then go into wholesale where you can increase that price point and you can then expand your brand globally. So that's kind of a quick overview of a strategy that I would give to somebody probably.
Brilliant. No, that's really helpful because it's one of those dilemmas when I meet clients is, do I go to the consumer where you get a better margin, but your volume might not be as high? Or do I go for the wholesaler where it sounds great because you might have volume. As you said, you might starve with you got to make a lot of product, but not making much on it. But it makes you feel good because you've got some big buyer or somebody buying your stuff, but you're not making any money. So it's a very that's a very good advice. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
What go on,
Sorry.
sorry. No,
Oh,
go
and
on.
I would also say as well, like most people get into this dream of wholesale and you don't realize that the terms are getting longer. Like buyers want to essentially, or retailers want to pay 30 and 60 days after you've delivered the product. So you've got to find the cash flow up front, which there's lots of people who can come in, they can help you maybe to make that purchase. But then you're hoping for that retailer not to go bust and to pay you. It's not a safe or smart way to expand, in my opinion. Not
Yeah,
initially.
yeah. I see that. That is really, really an issue. And what would you say? I mean, some of it you said already, but what would you say some of your biggest learnings in this industry you're in that you could share with others?
That it takes time and you have to be prepared to give it that time as well to grow. The thing I've also learned as well is not every method that works for somebody else is going to work for your company. So we really learned so many different methods in working with so many different partners. I've had the real pleasure of kind of being a bit more of a Mary where I'm sitting down kind of at the feet of a lot of people where I get to listen to how their businesses are working. I get to listen to what their challenges are. And then I get the opportunity afterwards or later on to be a solution for them or to connect them to the right people. I think that's the biggest learning that I've had out of everything is people need to learn to listen to each other a lot more, because I think like rather than us all trying to just use each other and just sell something, if you can listen to somebody else, you'll find that in the process you can be their solution. So that's the biggest learning that I've taken away. It's made me a better leader, it's made me a better mother, it's made me a better wife, it's made me a better director.
Brilliant. Yeah, really interesting. I mean, it's something I try to live by. This but genuine belief in collaboration is usually better. Um, Tell us something. Do you have a daily routine?
Oh man. Um I have two children, so as Rihanna said, routine becomes something that you have to. But I'm not naturally inclined to routine. But I mean, I would say that my day is supposed to start from 10 o'clock. I block out my calendar before so that I can spend time with the children, get them off to work, spend time with Jesus in prayer, like get myself solid first. Say goodbye to my husband if I have that moment as well, and then by 10 o'clock I'm supposed to start having my meetings, but my phone goes off by about 9 o'clock, and then everybody in the team wants to spend that time with me because you know, me serving them first, my team helps them to basically go out into their markets and do what they need to do. And each one of them, I usually have my own little pep talk with each one of them as well, make sure that they are okay, because they're women too, and they've got their own things going on, their kids, their husband, their lives. So I do try to spend that time with them in the morning first so that they can just be okay and ready to go and sow seed.
Mm.
And then the rest of the day, I pick up my son then at 11:45. And then after that, I work a little bit more until around this time, 3 o'clock now. And then by the time they come back at like 4 o'clock, I don't do anything until the evening time, do their dinner. And then by 7 o'clock, I start working again until about 9. So that's usually my routine. But the weekends are sacred. I don't answer my phone on the weekends. That's it.
Nice. A lot of people would love to have that, isn't it? Weekends are sacred. That's
you,
lovely.
you have to create that time. It's just if you don't, it's not going to happen. And like I would recommend to anybody, even doesn't matter how busy they are, have a Calendly and book out times you don't want anybody to meet with you or speak to you, and then stick to those times, because people will naturally then work within those funnels. They have to. And if it's really important, then you can move something.
That's brilliant. Yeah. Well, I like to teach, we call it default diary, booking time for yourself, for your marketing and the things that somebody else can steal. So we say, if you don't book it in, you'll just give it up. So anybody says, are you free on Wednesday? Are you free on the evening? Are you free on this? And it's so easy to say yes because there's nothing in the diary. But if you get into that habit, as you said, to book in that time, no, I've already got to book in that time. They don't know that that might just be with your husband.
Exactly.
But nevertheless, I'm busy. And people just say, fine, can we do something else? So that's really interesting. I like that. That's brilliant. Is is AI something that is impacting on your industry yet?
It is something that is gradually going to start moving the needle when it comes down to the accuracy of buyers. I've recently completed a course with MIT Sloan on AI, and we are now developing our own course under Internship for Mentorship, which is an accelerator program that we do, which basically trains the industry. And because we've got such high penetration of buyers within our network across the retail sector, we are working with them to train them on how to use this tool, how to integrate it within their systems. But the main thing with AI is data, first of all, like being able to clean the data and like allocate which data you want to manipulate within the structure of your retailer. And then the second aspect is building in the weighting. So what end do you want it to achieve, or what do you want to program in? There are a lot of AI tools that are coming out for the retail sector, which helps to manage things like inventory, private shopping, client relations, things like that. But there is still yet to be a tool that holistically manages the whole structure of the company, which is something that would be game changing in my view. And I think for buyers, it's particularly dangerous, not dangerous, but it's a particular threat to the buying sector of the retail market, because it essentially is going to reduce a lot of the low level jobs first. So you're buying admins and merchandising admins in terms of how you upload stock. But then I'm also speaking to an industry that is still working. A lot of these retailers are still working on Excel 1993. So I don't like it. Being realistic, we can talk about AI all we want, but until the foundations of how we capture and manipulate data is in place, then we're not really at that place of it being a threat quite yet. There are some like giants in the industry, like L'Oreal, for example, that has like 100 years worth of beauty data, and they've got it obviously in a really, really great, system and CRM in their back end, where they'll be able to turn out answers and responses as, what's the next beauty trend, what's the next product, what do my customer like to buy, and how do I recreate that in another product? What fragrances are working, what smells do they? I mean, that kind of data is just powerful. But again, it's really dependent on the systems and the infrastructure that these retailers put in place first to then be able to build for the future. And that's where it is. It's just thinking about future proofing your business. And I think a lot of retailers do need to focus on this and double down on it as quickly as possible.
Brilliant. You mentioned clearly religion or God is an important part of your life. And I remember we spoke briefly, and I said, what would be your book recommendation? And what would be your book recommendation then? So tell others what books you love reading.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I appreciate that. No, like so I would say the only Bible I really do read consistently is the Bible, just because genuinely I'm reading so many emails and text messages. Other than that, I do not get time. But it is the one source that I have of just wisdom. It applies to daily life. It gives me kind of the strength and guidance that I need, and it always speaks to me. So the Bible is the one thing I do read, and I read it to myself, I read it to my children. I actually have, and this is something that I would give to anybody, but I've got prayer points that I stick around the house. And they're like in my kitchen, they're in each one of the children's rooms and in my bedroom. And I do one set every month. So every month I kind of sit down and I find the ones that I feel are for that month, and like some of the good ones. So the first one is always keeping them short, so it helps you to remember them and you say them on a daily basis. We shall taste and see that the Lord is good. Let perfect love cast out all fear. The Lord shall supply all our needs according to his riches and glory. And this is my favorite one. The wealth on the seas will be brought to us. To us, the riches of the nations will come. And so I
Wow.
have my entire family every day getting up and saying these things every day over themselves. And so, like, everybody finds, I think, their own little way of doing their affirmations or their meditations, or, so I just think by simply just having just 4 little points and being able to speak out into your existence what you're expecting to see in your business or what you're expecting to see in your life, in your marriage, in your family, it's really important just for your whole family to be focused towards those goals. And you would be amazed to see what happens in your business and in your family.
Yeah, it's absolutely it's something quite difficult to convince some people about the power of language. But one of the things which is really interesting is if you reverse it, everybody gets it. If you said every day tell your children something negative, they'll go, oh no, 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 that will have a terrible impact on them. So we say, well, therefore, doesn't that make it clear that if you tell yourself positive messages every day, it does have an impact? So people tend to think, oh, if it's positive and it's all sort of esoteric and all kind of, it's all a bit woo-woo. But people clearly see it if it's the negative. And we have so much social media and stuff, messages and all kind of crazy stuff going in our heads. It's like here I'm currently in Cape Town, and there's so much happening. You see somebody in a lovely car and then somebody with bare feet.
Yeah.
It's a very strange environment,
And
and
how did they get
sometimes
there?
we need grounding. Yeah, we need
How did
grounding
they
and
get
stuff.
there? And we're all here to learn from other people. We're looking at Elon Musk. We're looking at all these big people and wondering how you got there. Like, and you know what? It starts with a to-do list. We all have our
That's
to-do
it.
list. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like whether
yeah,
it's like I've got to go supermarket shopping. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. But that's your to-do list. So why not have this to-do list so that your spirit and your mind align with that to-do list as well? Like this
yeah, yeah,
to-do list is important. I mean, there's a scripture that says, write the vision and the people will run for it. And there's scientific evidence to suggest that once you write something down, your brain then starts to find a way to make it happen. It just starts to do it. And somehow all of a
yes,
sudden, you notice then all the pieces start to come into place. You're like, wait, how did that happen? Didn't I think about this last week? So it's really important. Just keep it in front of you. What is your to-do list? What's your big vision, no matter what it is? And I always have a rule of 4. I do it with my clients. I do it with I do it with anything. Break it down to 4, because 4 is digestible. 4 is easy. 4 is order. It doesn't matter how complex the project is. Break it into 4
ah,
phases.
that's interesting because I hear a lot of people say the rule of 3, but it's interesting. The rule of 4 is slightly different, but it's the concept's the same. Just
Yes.
keep it tight enough so you can focus and some people have so many things they're trying to do. It's impossible to even be focused. So it's nice to have a number that is manageable. It's a bit like phone numbers. You know, if somebody says a phone number and they don't pause, it's very difficult to write it correctly the first time. Even credit cards, isn't it? Credit cards goes
Yes,
four numbers, four
correct.
numbers,
Yeah.
four numbers, four numbers, because otherwise you keep typing it wrong. So the human brain needs segments. So it's quite interesting. Yeah.
Exactly.
What what would you say is the biggest challenge in your industry right now?
Um, Competition and disconnection. I mean, like I think we're like in the 80s, you very much had that, the big companies and the big giants that were like completely competing against each other. And you talk about who your competitor is. And I think we're now, since COVID, we're moving into a collaboration phase where you see brands like Coperni and Courage and Adidas and Nike, and you see these brands like Nike and Gucci or Adidas and Gucci. You see these brands partnering with um, with other brands that would have before been seen as a competitor. But it's a way of galvanizing different markets and tapping into a different market that another brand couldn't. So like what I love about what we do here at We Are CoCo is it's about collaboration. So when we're inviting, the Altaires and Chalhoubs and the Net-a-Porters and the Farfetches of the world, it is about like having a general place where information about our industry can sit in one place, and where we can actually rub minds together and say, hey, well, you're doing that actually makes a lot of sense. This actually be a solution for me, because the more that we have our information in one place is the more that we can all grow. So that I think that mentality of competitiveness needs to die, especially if we're going to move forward in an agile way for the future. And I think we just need to be able to be a little bit more open, because it allows more room for creativity and innovation. Also, I would say, like, I'm very disappointed at the moment with the UK in particular. I mean, like, it's become extremely difficult for businesses, particularly in fashion, to thrive here since Brexit. Brexit has disconnected us from the European Union. It means that shipping and import duties are at an all-time high. People are not spending. And then with this new government coming in place, wanting to tax every single aspect of the current business or economy, or like people who are driving the economy within the UK, where does that tax money come from if we cannot drive business? So I think it's really difficult in this market. I love the fact that we are a global company, and that's the reason that we've managed to survive. But if I were stuck like renegated just to the UK alone, I'd be in a lot of trouble. And I think that's really unfair. It's unfair because I think I have a very American kind of mentality when it comes to business, of just the next deal, the next
Yeah.
right now. It's a very different appetite for business in the American market. And I find that when you come to the UK, automatically when you have this kind of economy, everybody freezes up. Everybody doesn't know what to do. And there's nothing in the UK at the moment to support innovation or for new businesses to grow. And that's really, really, really hard, especially in fashion. So there needs to be a lot more of a collective effort from our government to support, UK fashion industry on a whole. That's my opinion.
Mm. Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. It's definitely very topical right now.
Yes.
Um, would you do anything different if you had to start over?
Would I do anything different? Would I do anything different? No, no, I'm very happy with the way that we've progressed and that we've grown. Um, I mean, we've created a platform that is open to all businesses at every level, really. So both emerging brands and, luxury brands. We've worked with big luxury brands. We've done projects with like Burberry, with Theory. So we've done some big projects in the past, but I love the way that we've grown. I think we've grown very organically, very steadily, and we continue to grow in a very organic way. And I like the fact that it gives me the ability to learn at each step, and it gives my team the ability to learn at each step as well.
Brilliant. One interesting thing, you mentioned some of the things, but the data suggests about 80% of businesses don't get to year five. They don't work. So is there anything you would say to a business owner watching this saying there's some tips to think about in their business?
Yes, what I've learned in the past is that you will always have one or two products that perform best. So it's kind of the McDonald's theory. So if you watch that movie about McDonald's, the founder,
Yeah, great film.
it was a great film. It was a great film, but that theory can be applied to anything. In that, like, I find that a lot of businesses tend to start off with too many ideas and too many products. You need to boil down your business down to one core idea and two or three products. And then from those three products, you're looking at those products that will resonate with your customer. You can see repeat buying. You can see, because after 5 years, you definitely know what products are selling. Um, and then when you look at, then if you can then get rid of all the other clutter and just focus on these three products and then build your brand around those three products, you should be able to find a way to multiply the stream of income that you're getting from those three products. So I think that's the clearest direction I would give. Another thing as well is brand identity is important. You look at brands like Burberry that have changed creative directors several times. They've completely lost their way. A brand like Burberry is known for, the trench coat and, the check, the classic Burberry check that came out of the trench coats that they built during World War One and World War Two. And what was interesting about that product is that they supplied the entire army, and then from there they became a fashion company. Personally, Burberry, I think, needs to go a little bit back to its roots and origin, and then they need to understand who the customer is today. But if, as long as you can always understand who you are at your foundation, then you'll never lose your way. The minute you try to change that foundation, is the minute that you lose your way in this industry.
Mm,
And the customers see that. They see when you're trying to pivot away from something that you've already known. But the fact is that the customer has trust and faith in what you've been able to achieve in saying that you stand for this. So the minute you say you stand for a particular thing, you have to remain consistent. Otherwise, the customer sees you a little bit like a flaky boyfriend having a midlife crisis. And then all of a sudden, they don't want to be in a long-term relationship with you anymore. So that's the most important thing.
Yeah, that's great advice. Some people might remember where they tried to rebrand Coke and they brought out a new Coke and it almost bankrupted them. It literally could have destroyed the company because people said they don't care. All the testing showed they preferred the new taste. But the problem is when people went in the shop, they bought what they always liked, what they always bought.
Correct.
So people, people still wanted the core product. Don't change it, And it's interesting that they've just stuck with that now. They've brought new things, but they've kept the original. So it's quite interesting. So we're just finishing off in a sense now. That if I gave you £100 million, what positive change could you do to build a company or build a business? What would you do with it? It's a lot
Um,
of money.
It is a lot of money, but I see too many women in this industry to realize some of the struggles that we have of wanting to achieve our dreams, but not having any kind of corporate help and feeling like we have to leave our children at home and then go into the office. So the very first thing that I would do is build a creche within our office and build a learning center as well. So something that has like nannies and support so that women can bring their children into work if they need to and they have that support. That's one of the very first things that I would do. The next thing that I would probably do is probably help to put some of those kids through school as well. So like make that a part of it as bonuses. So rather than applying bonuses to people for the year, I'd probably put that bonus in like a trust for each, if you have children, that it actually helps you through school. So we actually help another generation of people, of children behind us. And the rest I'd probably genuinely spend on some kind of yacht or small island for myself where I could just maybe have a little bit more time for myself.
Why not? Why not? Bit of relaxation is always good. And my final question really is just, have you got any other tips you give, you know, those would-be business owners or business owners maybe watching, thinking, wow, this sounds really exciting. But what couple of tips could you leave them with in terms of where they go, their business?
I think fashion is a rat race. It looks really glamorous on the outside, but it is hectic. So you really have to love it if you're going to be in it. But I would say, like anything that you do, you have to love it. Don't stay in anything, in any company where you are not passionate about what you're doing. Don't just do a job just to do it. I don't think it's worth it, especially in this day and age, especially after COVID. Um, the you know when I left PR and communications, I remember like leaving with one salary. I had like 1 month of salary, and I said, okay, God, well, they say you're a provider. Okay, let's see that provision. Let's see you provide. And the first month after I left my job, I matched my salary. The second month I doubled it, third month I tripled it, and I've never been without. So I would say, like, as long as you're passionate about what you're doing, there's money in it. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be, reading tea leaves, but as long as you are passionate about what you're doing, you will find a way
Yeah,
to monetize that. But it starts with passion first and deep love and commitment.
that's brilliant. So thank you so much for this, taking a little time out to give us all these nuggets. I'm learning all the time as well, so it's been absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, Asari.
Pleasure.